Good afternoon, everybody. We are thrilled to have all of you here with us today at the launch of our very first Asia Game Changer West Awards. We have our Asia Society heavyweights in the room with us today, our global CEO, Ambassador Josette Sheeran, EVP Tom Nagorski, Honorary Chair of Northern California, Jack Wadsworth, our Chair, Ken Wilcox, Board members Rob Cox, Michael Chewy, and Bill Fuller. We have Southern California Executive Director Jonathan Karp, Chief of Staff Liz Jennings, and content producer Michelle Flor-Cruz. If you want to share your experience here today and tonight, hashtag GameChangersWest. Our mission at Asia Society is to build bridges across countries and cultures, and we have 14 centers across the globe. Through our networks of our Game Changers here today, we have been very fortunate to be introduced to new friends from Australia, Afghanistan, Stanford, and the health community. Our Game Changers are doing incredible work globally, but they're also doing fantastic work locally. So we wanted to open this event up to the community. This symposium is a chance for all of you to meet new friends, to interact with our Game Changers. Many of you are here because you wanted to meet our Game Changers. We know that people want to recognize them with certificates of achievement, so thank you for recognizing their work. You've seen their bios in their printed copies in the room, and they're also on the website. Dr. Sam So, he's been impacting millions of lives through his work to eradicate hepatitis B. This is a major problem for Asians. We weren't aware of how big this problem was until we did an event with him in July. And Dr. So is changing the game here in San Francisco, but also in China. He is transforming the way the government in China gives vaccines to children against the disease. Here in the US, he's been recognized by many for his work, including Governor Gavin Newsom, State Treasurer Fiona Ma, and the White House. Let's hear it for Sam So.
Thank you.
Marita Cheng joins us from Australia. She was recently named by Forbes as one of the top 50 women in tech. She's the founder of Robogals, which advocates gender equity in engineering and technology. She's also launched a number of very cool apps. One of them started right here in the Bay Area at Singularity University. Let's hear it for Marita. The Afghan Robotics Team is represented by Roya Mahboob. She is known as being one of the first IT female CEOs in Afghanistan. Roya is the leader of this robotics team, and you'll hear how she's been spending time with President Bill Clinton and Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. So this is our first class of Game Changers West. One quick note, please stick around to the end of the symposium because we have Southwest e-passes to give away to 3 lucky attendees. Let's get started. Tom Nagorski is here. He is going to moderate a discussion with our Game Changers. Then we're going to open it up to your questions. Tom is here from New York. He spent many years with news megastar anchors Peter Jennings and Diane Sawyer. Please join me in welcoming Tom.
Thank you, Margaret, and thanks to all of you for joining this afternoon's event. Great thanks to these 3 amazing people to my left. Just a quick word before we start the questions, and by the way, I'll keep it to half the time or maybe less so that you all can ask your questions of this group. We have, in New York, Josette and I have been running this Asia Game Changers franchise initiative, whatever you want to call it, for the past 5 years. And it's a great event. It's a great way to recognize people, some of whom are very, very well known, but others who've had equal impact around Asia and the world are less well known and deserving of the honors. And whether they are, I mean, just when I say well known, we've had Alibaba CEO Jack Ma in this group, Malala, the great iconic rights champion and Nobel laureate from Pakistan. We have had Indra Nooyi, we have had His Highness the Aga Khan, and so forth. But as I say, a lot of people who are less in the bold-faced name category. But we did it for a few years and then realized that unless you were at the big gala gathering and had paid a high price for it. And by the way, we appreciate anybody who's paid a price for the ticket, because that's good for the Asia Society. But unless you were in that group, and even if you were, a dinner event is a dinner event, and it's not always affording of an opportunity to have conversations like this one. And sometimes Josette and I would say, after this amazing group had come and gone each year, that even we hadn't really had a chance to have a meal with, or a back and forth with these extraordinary people who had been briefly in our midst. And I say all that just by way of background. That's why we started having these conversations with the game changers each year. And the other thing I'll say, and this is a moderator's problem, but it's a lovely problem to have. Obviously, when you bring a group like these to the stage, there isn't an obvious issue, although the two young women to my left have a close connection in the world of robotics and tech. But it's not a panel that's put together because of an issue or a particular angle you want to discuss. So, for example, last fall we had Indra Nooyi, who I mentioned, former CEO of PepsiCo, but also the people who orchestrated and participated in that crazy rescue effort from the caves in Thailand. And one of the wonderful things about this is it's not that many places where you would have people from those diverse backgrounds collide. With that by way of background, my first question for these three great individuals is one about the path to get to this point in your lives, as different as they have been, in terms of leadership, in terms of the impact and change that you've brought. And perhaps by way of seniority, Dr. So, I'll start with you. And we just met for the first time. But I know a fair bit from not just the video, but what we've read about your extraordinary journey to help really save a lot of lives, not just in this country, but in China as well. And I wonder if I'll ask this of all of you, but in your paths to all that impact, was there a moment earlier in your life, later on, when you thought, in your case, I don't just want to be a doctor, I want to be a game changer. I want to do something that is going to really make that kind of a difference? Or did events come to you?
So I actually started my career as a transplant surgeon, right? So, and my initial focus and career is really addressing the gaps, especially in children who requires a kidney or liver transplant. And because everybody pay a lot of attention to adults who need transplant and not enough to children, because no one makes money on transplanting children, because usually they are like Medicaid, patients, right? And I felt that a lot of the sort of national societies, they pretty much ignore the problems in children who need a transplant, including growth and development after transplant, how to reduce the complications of all these medicines they took to prevent rejection. So my first sort of major initiative was to actually form a North America organization where we actually invited all the sort of transplant centers in Canada and US to form a coalition to really study the short-term and long-term challenges of children who need a liver transplant. So that became very successful. And actually my initial reputation in the world is doing transplant in children under 1 year of age. And so...
sorry, is it really the case that because of Medicaid, was that that doctors wouldn't
Well, it also is very tedious because you have to sew together these tiny blood vessels.
Yeah.
So we always have to wear, magnifying lenses, and if those blood vessels clot off, the organ is gone. Yeah. So you have to retransplant them. So it's very stressful because you also have to deal with parents, because when you transplant adults, you deal with the patient. But when you transplant children, you have to deal with the parents, in addition. So it's a lot more stressful. So that's why a lot of people didn't pay much attention to that. So after we formed that organization, it became very successful. It became sort of funded by the federal government as a way to monitor transplant outcome. And so at that point in time, I thought, okay, it's like we've done as much as I can. And then at that time, I also came out to the Bay Area. I always said I came out to the Bay Area, my wife and I from the Midwest, in search of better Chinese food. Okay. I was in Minneapolis, and
there's a lot of people who are glad you did.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
And that's when I recognized there's a big problem in Asians who were dying from liver cancer or liver disease, because they were dying from hepatitis B, whereas most non-Asians were sort of dying from hepatitis C or alcohol-related sort of liver disease. And what I was amazed was no one seemed to recognize this issue. And at one time, some of these very famous transplant centers across the country actually deny Asians who were dying from hepatitis B for transplant, because based on a single study from a Southern California center that said the outcome was very poor. So they thought, well, they hypothesized that maybe because Asians got infected, very often at birth, they may have a very virulent virus, which tends to cause problem after transplant. Not based on science, not based on facts. So at that time, I was actually at CPMC, California Pacific, and we took all the patients, Asian patients that other centers have turned away, and we actually proved that actually Asians did better after transplant than non-Asians, because they were very compliant, taking the medications and all that. All right. And the major reason the outcome was poor in that particular center was late referral.
Right. They hadn't
so
been
by
screened.
the time they were referred, they were already intensive care unit bound, right? So they were much sicker. So that's why the outcome was not as good. So at the same time, and because I was already very sort of senior in the transplant community, and I didn't see anybody doing anything about this disease. So I decided, and also I sort of grew up at the most exciting time of transplant. Mm-hmm. When I was a resident, the chance of somebody coming out of the operating room after a transplant was like 50-50, flip of a coin. But by the time I was in San Francisco, we have survival rates of over 90%. Right? So the major limitation was organ supply. So to me, because my whole career I focus on addressing the gaps to improve outcome, mm-hmm. right? So I thought, okay, transplant we've done as well as we can now. There's not much I can contribute more to it. But with hepatitis B, it's totally ignored the problem in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I told my wife I'm going to take a salary cut to go into dealing with liver cancer and hepatitis B, because as a transplant surgeon, you make a lot more money, mm-hmm. right? So I'm glad my wife didn't, gave me too bad a hard time. and so I focus on addressing hepatitis because, as a transplant surgeon, sometimes we spend, 10, 12 hours just to save one life. Mm-hmm. And this is a disease we have really a straight path to elimination. Why? Because we have a very effective vaccine to prevent more people from getting mm-hmm. infected. And we have testing and treatments that can, right. so people don't have to get a transplant, so they don't die of liver cancer or liver disease. Right. But there was no action. There was mm-hmm. no one spearheading an effort for global elimination, or even in this country to address all the Asians walking around mm-hmm. with hepatitis B. But at that time, the U.S. government wasn't telling them what to do. Right. So I felt, there was a calling for me to do something about it. So I retired from transplant, which a lot of my friends in Europe thought I was crazy because I already have a very sort of international reputation on transplant. And so I took on hepatitis B and also liver cancer. Because liver cancer, hepatitis B increased the risk of liver cancer 100 times. Okay, so it's a major cause of liver cancer, which is the number 3 or 4 cause of cancer death in the world, even though it's not common in the U.S. So I felt, this is a great opportunity to help to make a difference, and that's how I went on this journey.
So thank you, Dr. So. I want to come back around, if time permits, to the China part of this because it's super interesting, and I guess it's one more giant gap, and we are the Asia Society. But in a way, you've given me another thread for the questions here, because as I think about the number of times you said filling a gap, Marita Cheng and Roya Mahboob have also, I think, in a way, you're about filling obviously very different kinds of gaps. So Marita, not to answer the question for you, but in terms of the original question about when you first had a path in your life journey that made you think you want to change something, I assume, well, I'm not going to assume. Why don't you see if I was right or not?
Sure. So I come from Cairns in Queensland in Australia. My parents are from Hong Kong and Guangzhou. And growing up, it's a small regional city, so there's 100,000 people there, 2-hour flight from the nearest city with over 1 million people. There weren't that many girls who wanted to go on and do engineering straight out of high school. And I thought, well, we're just this tiny little town. When I go to a bigger city, there'll be lots of girls just as passionate about engineering as I am. And I was really surprised when I went to university in Melbourne, and I found that in my course of 50 students studying mechatronics engineering and computer science, that there were only 5 girls in total doing the same. There were 50 in the whole class, 5 girls. And I later found out that was kind of the trend in Australia as well in terms of percentage of women in engineering. There's around 10% women in engineering in Australia. In my second year at university, I decided to start building a simple robot with my friends that would just walk around the room. And I approached the head of the electrical engineering department to ask for some funding. And he said he was interested in getting a group of uni students together to go to a school and teach the year 6 girls robotics in order to get them interested in engineering. And I thought I could actually make a difference to the number of girls in my class. And I thought, if we go out to one school, why don't we just go out to all the schools? And so I recruited my friends to help out. I recruited 24 of my friends. 4 of them showed up to our first meeting. And we started designing robotics workshops, calling schools, and recruiting even more people to join us. And that's how Robogals was formed. So we go out to schools with robots and teach girls how to build and program them, and tell them about all the exciting opportunities, all the world-changing innovations that they can create through engineering. And that was the start of that.
So I'm not sure how many people saw the videos that were playing when folks were coming in, but just to reprise one thing, just so people understand, can you talk a little bit about what's become of Robogals? Because a lot has happened.
Yeah, so in the first 3 months, we taught 124 girls from 5 schools around Melbourne. And then after those first 3 months, I actually went on exchange to Imperial College in London to study mechanical engineering for a year. And while I was over there, I thought it'd be great to have Robogals here in the UK as well, because then we could be a global organisation. But then it was really overwhelming being in London because I came from such a small place, and London was very busy and overwhelming. After about 3 months there, I realised there was nothing like Robogals in the UK. and there were 15 girls out of 150 in mechanical engineering. There were 4 girls out of 120 in computer science, 2 girls out of 17 aerospace engineering. And so I thought, well, if I want to make a difference to the young girls here, I need to be the one to do that. And so I emailed the Women in Engineering Society and said, hey, I want to start up this club, Robogals. And they sent out an email to people. I got a few responses, and I set the first meeting for Robogals in the UK. After about half an hour into that meeting, I realized that no one was going to show up, and so I started to cry. And then I decided I'll organize another meeting, and so I sent out another email for the next day to the people who said they were interested, and again, no one showed up. And I realized after about 15 minutes this was the case, and so again I started to cry, but I cried a little less, and for a bit shorter period because I was growing resilient. And then I thought, I've got 6 months left here in the UK, I can keep doing what I'm doing and get the same result, or I can try to do something differently. And so I emailed everyone who said they were interested and said, hey, when are you free exactly? Missed you at the meeting. We had such an amazing meeting, so much fun. And so at our third meeting, we had 4 young women show up, and then I found more people who went on to spearhead the organisation even after I returned to Australia. While I was in the UK, I noticed that a lot of student organisations, they weren't just in one place, but they tended to be national because the UK is so tiny and it's really cheap to go from one city to another. It's like 10 or 20 pounds to catch a bus from London to Cambridge to Southampton to Bristol to Bath. And it meant that if you're interested in the windsurfing club or the Cheese Society, you could, on your weekends, go and visit Cambridge or Bristol and meet up with other students who are interested in that and form a national community. And I thought, if Robogals is national in Australia, we could make an even bigger impact, not just in Melbourne. And so while I was in the UK, I contacted 4 other universities in Australia and asked if they would like to have their own Robogals chapters. And after about 6 months of back and forth emails, they all said yes. So I thought, I'm so excited. We're expanding Robogals throughout Australia. I want everyone to know, let's hold a press conference, let's tell everyone. And then I thought, we're just this tiny student organisation. No one knows who we are. No one cares that we're expanding around Australia. And so I decided that I need to do something different. And I thought, let's organise an event here in the UK in order to drum up some publicity around what we're trying to do. And so my friends and I started brainstorming. We thought about doing a club night or a disco night or inviting Stephen Hawking to speak, but we had 0 budget. After months and months of brainstorming, we decided that we would hold the largest robot dance, Guinness World Record attempt, in Leicester Square, where all the big movie premieres happen. In the month before the event, it was after my uni exam, so I would sit on my computer every day and try to drum up attention and get as many people on board as possible, try to reach out to all the newspapers and media outlets. On the day of the event, it didn't look like it was going to happen. We had like tens of people who'd signed up on Facebook, and we needed 270 people to break the world record. I noticed that a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur was organising a big event at a club, so I gave him a call and said, hey, your event is going to have 450 people. Could we kind of do our robot dance there, and then we'll break the world record together? And he got really excited. Then he said that it was too late notice and they had other plans. So on the day of the event, myself and 3 friends, we stood under an umbrella. Only one other person came to the robot dance, but we couldn't find them because Leicester Square is such a big place. And then they emailed me afterwards and said, well, I came because I visited Cairns and I wanted to catch up with you. So that wasn't quite the intention either. Anyway, I was leaving the UK the next day, so there was nothing else that we could do, no more pivoting. Event was done and dusted, and that was that. So for the next couple of weeks, while I backpacked around Europe, I get out a list and write what went well, what didn't go well, what can I do better next time. And I wrote that list about 4 times until I didn't feel emotional about it. And even before I returned to Australia, I started organising my next largest robot dance, Guinness World Record attempt. I had a venue confirmed in writing. We partnered with Improv Everywhere, Melbourne, in order to drum up a crowd. And we already had tens of people who confirmed on Facebook. within 2 months of returning to Australia, we had 350 people do the robot dance on the lawns of the University of Melbourne. We had media from all the major newspapers, radios, television outlets. It was really awesome to go to the news agency, pick up all the newspapers that reported on our record-breaking attempt. And that whole experience really taught me that it's okay to fail, and that, yeah, if you do something and things don't go well, that's okay. You just pick yourself up and learn from your mistakes, and it's fine.
It's okay to cry.
It also taught me that it's better to learn from other people's mistakes as well. It's much faster and cheaper.
And you're in 30-plus countries now, right?
So now we're in 11 countries. We have over 30 chapters. In the US, we're at Caltech, we're at Georgia Tech, Columbia, Wesley, and we're also in Canada as well, in University of Toronto. Yeah. So we're all over North America as well now.
And there's much more in Marita's world about what she's doing now in the robotics sphere beyond Robogals, and maybe we'll get to that, or maybe you want to ask her some questions about it. But speaking of robotics and tech and girls' education and filling gaps, that I guess is a natural segue, sadly, to Afghanistan, where education of any kind for girls has been a challenge over the years. And I guess you could say you almost, you and the young girls who you support, Roya, you're kind of like Robogals in Afghanistan, right? I mean, back to the initial question, what was the driving motivation for you and for those young girls who you've supported in Herat and beyond?
Sure. First of all, I would like to say that thank you for everyone to coming here, and it's absolutely a pleasure to be part of this, and also say hi and salam to my Afghans who are here. Thank you. Khosh Amadin. Well, everything's for me started. I was actually grew up in Iran as a refugee in my childhood, and in 2003 we back to Afghanistan. And for me, everything's changed when I went for the first time heard about this magic box that if you connect you to the world, and there was only in a cafe that was open in Herat. And in Herat, we only had one library and very old books to find information. And if we wanted to have any updated, we have to write the books, to write the name of the books and ask someone to come to bring from Iran. But this magic box, or this internet club, was changed everything for us. So
can I ask when that was? When did you get onto that magic box of the internet?
End of 2003. Mm-hmm. So for the first time I went and they see this computer and call it computer, and when I started to using the internet, everything was changed for me, and I found out that there is, of course, lots of more outside of the world that I always knew, and there are more reality than one reality that I know. And I decided to make the computer science and technology to be the center of my career. And probably all Afghans knows that the parents always want you to be an engineer or be a doctor. And then when I went to, we had a concours and there's an entry exam. So I was selected. There was only one computer science faculty there. And then I was selected with only one option, and it's computer science. And then when I was selected, my parents always asking me, how you select for computer science? There was no other engineering. I said, probably my number wasn't fit with civil engineering. So that's how I came to the computer science. And then I graduated. I started work for Herat University, and for 3 years as IT coordinator, I was one of youngest and also only female in 22 public universities that manage IT in the university.
That's worth some applause, isn't it?
And, thank you. And in 2010, I decided to start a company with my youngest sister and 2 other colleagues to create a company that created a job opportunity for the female, especially female who graduated from computer science. And we did it, but then the problem we had that we didn't have access to finance, and then working with a very male-dominated industry was very difficult. Even we could get a job, always we had a problem to get paid, and paid on time or even for fair pay, because they always prefer to give cheaper prices to us. But then lots of these problems, it made me to think that to becoming as a digital entrepreneur, finding my clients outside of Afghanistan, outside of border of country that I knew. So I found LinkedIn, and through the LinkedIn, and finally I found my first investors, and he was Italian-American, live in New York, and he never came to Afghanistan or that region. But he likes the idea and he invested in my company. And we started a platform called Women in X that allowed women to write the blogs and upload the movies. And then we decided to pay them back based on advertising that network. And that's how I get involved with Bitcoins and the blockchain in 2013. And we are the first people who brought Bitcoin in Afghanistan, and we invested on that. We paid our employees in Bitcoins, and our platform get extended to Pakistan, Egypt, and Mexico. In 2014, I left Afghanistan and came to the United States. And I started Digital Sun Fund with one goal, to see that technology is an accessible option for everyone, especially women in conservative countries. And I saw that there are millions of girls who are in Afghanistan that are left behind of the world move forward without them. And they might be careers as I am. The only things that is needed that we're giving them tools that open to the rest of the world. It's up to them what they can do, but it's just giving the access and as well the tools. So we built in 13 technology centers. We train more than 15,000 of the girls so far. They learn about computer, they learn about the skills about blockchains, they learn about the financial literacy, and we had successfully 100 of the women who started the small businesses. In how I get involved with the Afghan Girls Robotics Team, 2 years ago, Joe Sestek, the former president of First Global, contacted me and said that, I know that you do a lot of things in Afghanistan. Do you have a team of teenagers to come for competition in robotics? And I said, well, we have everything. We can bring the girls for the coding, hackathon, everything, but I'm not sure about robotics because robotics is so new in Afghanistan. We only have a few girls in university level if you want. And he says, no, it should be between 13 to 16 or 17 years old. So I said, I'm not sure if I can find. Then he said, then build a team. And then I decided to build a team of all girls because it definitely sent a message to all the girls in Afghanistan and also to the world. We took an exam from 150 students, then selected 20, but many of the family take their girls out. Many of them didn't know what is a robot. And then we ended up with 6 girls that they had a passport, very important, and then they had a family permission to come to United States. And that was also another challenge because many of parents didn't want to send their girls without their family's member. And these girls also know a little bit about robotics, so that was a good point to start. So that's how we started with them, but unfortunately they couldn't get the visa, and their robot stuck 3 months in a custom. And then we decided to, when we found out actually, that we are only one of 2 countries in 163 countries that didn't get a visa, then we feel that we are insulted and why it should be like that. And then it says, okay, social media is the best things because it's always helped me. So let's talk about our stories and telling our stories to the world. And then that's how we reach out to the social media, and social media reach out to the news, and everybody start to cover the story. And that's reached out to 53 congressmen to sign a petition for us. And then later on, at the last minute, President Trump himself got involved and gave the visa to the girls, and that's how the girls come to the United States, and the lives has been changed for them. And they're becoming as a symbol of hope, unity, and happiness for Afghanistan.
So one of the many great things about this gathering, this conversation, is it's not a contest. You don't have to judge which of these crazy, amazing stories is better, but they're just all remarkable. I have to ask you, because, Roya, there was a big article in the New York Times. If you didn't see it, dig it out. I think it's just about a week or 10 days ago, about the girls who are the young girls who Roya's just referenced, who she has championed, who are doing so well at robotics and have traveled, because now they not only got their visas to come here, right? They won, I think, a big championship in Estonia. They have been back here. Another one, by the way, will be at the dinner tonight. Fatima, one of the girls in the group. But one of the many interesting points about that article, which was largely about issues facing young women now in Afghanistan as talk continues about an international withdrawal, was what it is like for them to come back to their communities. You mentioned that their parents were in some cases not sure about whether they even wanted them to travel. But what is it like for you initially, but now for these girls, who many of whom are still teenagers, to come back having had this grand tour to New York, to Europe, to California now? Are they celebrities? Are they just the same old when they come back? Is it awkward? Is it sometimes dangerous?
I think that I really appreciate the New York Times writer. There are some small tiny things that it was so exaggerated in that
never
article.
happens.
It was never happened. And, but back into the team, yes, they are right now becoming as a celebrity. And community is that's not funny, it's interesting things that there has been changed the view of especially men's in community on the women's ability in science and many other industries. We have never seen this kind of the cases for other women. They are like doing some things in Afghanistan. Always they characterize for everything that they do. And fortunately, we see with this team is a different view. And at the beginning, we had some challenges and some threats, but recently we have a lot of like good and positive view from Afghan community and very big support from Herat community, and especially in the governments that they are supporting them. And they become very respectful because they are working they are more the girls in the science, which I think that Islam and our community respect that, and that's that I think that it was a shift mode for the Afghan community that I have never seen with any other projects. I have to say, we have working in Afghanistan for many years, and we have done a lot of the projects, but something is different about robotic thing that I see that many of Afghans, when they hear their names, they feel proud and they are very supportive of this thing.
That's great to hear. Dr. So, if I come back to, I think we left at one more gap that you have worked to fill, and again, taking this to a grand global scale, which is in China. Can you talk a little bit about, back to the screening issue, the vaccine issue, what have you been able to accomplish in that, and what are the obstacles that still persist in that area in China?
So, China has the largest burden of hepatitis B and liver cancer. So when I started working in China about almost 18 years ago, it was estimated 90 million people have hepatitis B, and every year 500,000 people die from liver cancer, liver disease caused by hepatitis B. And at that time, about 25 years ago, China, although they started vaccinating newborns, because before they started vaccinating newborns, the chance by the age of 1 year, 1 in 10 of those children already have developed this chronic infection, which put them later on in life at risk for dying from liver cancer and liver disease. So with a lot of advocacy, China actually started vaccinating newborns, but still there were a lot of gaps. So what we try to do is encourage the Chinese government to really provide free vaccine, because at that time, and also free injection. At that time, even in 2005, the Chinese government decided to give the vaccine for free, but before that, doctors can still charge to give the vaccine. So a lot of children actually did not get vaccinated, especially in the poorer part of China. So we estimated that there were up to like 90 million children who did not get vaccinated. And so I was very enthusiastic trying to advocate to the Chinese government, you should vaccinate these unvaccinated children so they wouldn't get infected. Right? Yeah. And so we did demonstration projects in China, and the largest one was in one province in the northwest part of China, right next to Tibet, where almost half the populations were minorities, including Tibetans. And we actually provided free vaccination for over 500,000 children, pretty much all the children who were not vaccinated. And to really convince the government that you should scale this up across the country, we also did a cost effectiveness analysis showing the government it would be cost saving. It will save you money in the future from healthcare costs if you just vaccinate all these children. So we were very pleased that the Chinese government actually accepted our recommendation, and over the course of the next 3 years, they vaccinated 70 million children, across the country for free.
That's another applause line, isn't it?
So we keep on, advocating to the Chinese government, especially with data and research, because governments are like business groups. You have to show them the cost and the benefit if you really want them to buy into your sort of suggestions. So showing the saving lives and reducing sort of diseases is not enough. Sure. Usually you have to show them the cost, right? So we continue to do that. In China now, our latest effort is really sort of shooting for total elimination of mother-to-child transmission. So every year in China, about 1 million women with hepatitis B give birth.
That's where those 1 in 10 come from, right? Yep.
But even there's 1 million, and they have a very high chance of sort of transmitting the infection to the newborn if the newborn did not get timely vaccination and other interventions. So the Chinese government estimate now, even the good job they have done in vaccinating newborns, every year still 50,000 newborns become infected. So our efforts now in 2 provinces in China, also in the northwest remote provinces with a lot of minorities, is to really demonstrate that it's feasible to totally eliminate mother-to-child transmission. And hopefully that the success of these demonstration projects will again sort of inspire the Chinese government to take ownership and scale up across the country. So for once and for all, that we can prevent more people from getting infected. So that's one project. The other things we've been really focusing in China is eliminating discrimination. There's a lot of misconception that hepatitis B can be transmitted by eating together or sharing the same dish. Okay, and that is a major cause of hardship for almost like 80 to 90 million people in China. Because if someone found out they have hepatitis B, they wouldn't want to eat with you, right? And they probably discourage their children to marry someone with hepatitis B. And so we've done a lot we actually spend money for major public service announcement in the subway system and all that. And we've been lucky to actually attract some celebrities to tell the story that it's not transmitted by casual contact and all that, and to really try to dispel this myth which caused discrimination. And we also actually back in 2009 we wrote to the Chinese government, and I actually asked my colleagues from World Health Organization to also join me to ask the Chinese government to once and for all introduce legislation to ban discrimination. And for the first time, the 3 Chinese agencies, including health and labor, education, actually came up with rules to ban discrimination, that you cannot not accept applicants to kindergarten if they test positive, Right. Because in those days, a lot of school students were turned down because they have hepatitis B. Of course, they wouldn't say it's because you have hepatitis B. They use other excuses. The same with employment. A lot of people, when they found out you have hepatitis B, they fire them or not promote them. So those are some of the issues we still are working to try to solve a change, but Chinese government don't put any money in this public service campaign. So very often we ended up with our donors supporting some of these campaigns.
Well, it's greatly appreciated. I want to honor what I said at the outset and leave the remainder of the time, although I've got a stack of other questions, but questions from the room, if you can raise your hands. I think we have mics around the room, and a question for anyone or the group of game changers we have up here. Anybody, don't be shy. If you can just wait for the microphone. Yep.
So what is the major, the transmission, how it happens with hepatitis B? What's the main thing?
So hepatitis B is transmitted in 3 ways. The way I teach my students is it's not BS, it's BBS. Birth from an infected mother to a newborn, from infected blood, just such as reusing needles and syringes, and from unprotected sex. But the risk of actually developing this chronic infection, which causes cancer and liver disease, the risk is highest if babies get infected. Okay, this is a disease. The younger you get infected, the more likely you cannot clear the infection. All right, but if you get infected as an adult, such as unsafe injection, you most likely will get sick, but most of those people will recover. All right, so this is why we call it a silent killer, because most of the kids who got infected when they were babies, they never were sick. So they grew up never knowing that they have this infection unless they get a one-time hepatitis B test.
Anyone else? Josette? Hang on for the mic.
Hi, what inspiring stories. I'm curious always about what makes someone march to their own drumbeat in life and to take on the courage and the bravery to do so, and the humiliations of having no one show up to your meetings and having to, continue going, or to fight a cause where everyone's saying no and the doors keep closing. Could you talk about what internally gives you that fortitude to do it, and if you think that that's something that others can do? Can everyone do that, or is that something you were born with?
Should we start with the person who had a lot of tears?
Yeah, I think that for me personally, it's about just doing something that really challenges me, and doing something that really excites me, and also something that I don't know how to do. So if I think, I want to achieve this task and I know how to do most of it, but there's that 10% that I really don't know how to do. How do I grow and scale an organization globally? How do I manage thousands of people? I don't know how to do that, but that sounds fun. So let's go and give that a go. And I think it's just being really connected to what matters to me as well. So when I was growing Robogals, I thought it's really important that everything that we do is mission focused. It's around encouraging girls into engineering, inspiring them into engineering, but also making sure that we don't make any agreements with anyone that might want to deviate from our message and our vision. And so with that in mind, whenever any partnership opportunities came our way that didn't quite fit that vision, we could just say no, or do a small project with them, but not continue that relationship into something bigger. And I think even now, with all the other companies that I've started, it's I'm interested in that area. That's an interesting vertical. Let's see how we can add value there and make something that should exist for the world.
Roya, what to take Josette's question a bit further in your case, surely you didn't talk about it so much, but I'm quite certain you and some of those girls have faced your share of resilience. So what gives you the drive in that moment where it looks pretty dark, whatever it is, to go forward and not stop?
I think to not accept that everything that should be in the way that other people want. And for me was, if we wanted to bring the changes in the society, if we do not have a courage that moment to say no, we cannot. And if we always be accepted. And then I think that at that time we found that for centuries women were silent, and they always get attacked or get violence, and they can't really give their voices out. And if you talk about some things, they take your voice down or they take you down. And for us at that time, we find that social media was the best tools for us. At least we can talk about this and we can share our stories with the people in that, I think. But in general, I think that my curiosity, and then I'm very persistent person, and then it's make me for the things that I love and have passions to keep continue. And I also like to get the challenge and then to make this happen when people telling me that you can't.
It's safe to say we have 3 very persistent people here. Yes, sir, you had your hand up.
I think the last question was about resilience when things can be dark. Let's go to the other side, a light at the end of the tunnel. With Robogals, and surely what you're doing, you're remedying something that the tech and engineering industry has always said, well, there aren't enough capable individuals, that's why we are not diverse. You're going from the ground up and creating and expanding the universe of individuals of female gender who are skilled engineers, technicians, etc. What are your strategy now to reach out to the big tech company, engineering firms to say, hey, we're a resource. You should be plowing tons of branding information, money, and stuff to support us. Is that happening? Are you getting traction on that side?
Well, actually, I have to also mention that one of the projects that we are working with Afghan Girls Robotics Team is to building the STEAM schools that focusing on AI, robotics, and blockchains in Afghanistan with a 3-year plan to build innovation center and university taking the model of MIT to build in the next Afghan generation that they are becoming as leaders in science, technology, and engineering. We got partnered with Yale University already to design the campus. Carrie's here, she's my friend, and she is a co-founding of this project with us. And we get Explore Mars as well, part of the program. We're trying to get Dolph University and Technical University from Europe as well to get partnered with us. And we are trying to do the same things. I mean, preparing the young generation in Afghanistan for future jobs with the same quality of education here that they can get. We do outsourcing of the projects and create the job opportunities for them. So we have that plan, and we actually extended the program in Mexico. We just come back from Costa Rica, and the program is going to be extended there as well. That we believe that no matter where you are, if you're giving the same tools and opportunities, you can become as a next creator, designer, and genius, or maybe Mark Zuckerberg or Sheryl Sandberg. So it's about that you're giving the same opportunities and same quality of education for the people, no matter where they are, where their background is.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. We have a bunch of partners. A lot of our partners are in Australia because that's where our global team is and our Australia team is. But yeah, we have a bunch of engineering firms who partner with us and sponsor us. And yeah, I think we've partnered with Google at various points in time as well. But if you know anyone at those big tech companies, then feel free to get in touch.
I was going to say there'll be a little time for networking afterwards, right? Yes, ma'am, right here. If you can just wait for the microphone so folks can hear.
First of all, I would like to thank you all. Great, insightful information. I have a question for you, Ms. Roya. This is a different question. Supposedly, tomorrow you're going to meet with the president of Afghanistan and First Lady. And they will ask you what they can do for you as an Afghan woman. What will be your question? Mm-hmm. What do you want for them to help you in which area?
I think they've already had the meeting, actually.
We actually had the meeting with President Ghani with Afghan robotic teams last year. And we requested him that to helping us with the building the STEAM schools that we're focusing on high-tech technology. Unfortunately, or actually surprisingly, when we come to the meeting, he was asking all of his, the colleagues from different departments to be sitting at the table. And I was kind of surprised because I wasn't prepared for that meeting. I thought that it's just a meeting to meet with the president. But then he told me that he read all of our plans and he really wants to helping us. And then he told us to build 5 schools instead of 1. And ask every of those colleagues in the round of the table to take in a job and do that task. And I was so surprised. Me and Fatima was we were not preparing that president take that serious. And And actually, with the help of him, we got 6 acres of land recently from Kabul University with a $12 million investment, worth of investment of the Afghan government for the first step to show that they are interested in this project and they wanted to support it.
That's great. I'd like to continue. What would you think if the government changed? Would you be able to, are you hopeful?
Well, of course, we would love this government to continue because they are very supportive of the young generation and the women and they think about the technology, but we also aware about the peace process negotiation that the Taliban is come. I would say that we are hopeful for the future, and I think that the work that we are doing is create the job, created the better opportunities for Afghans, and whoever be in the power, I hope that if they like Afghanistan, if they love the community, they would not stop such projects.
Thank you very much. I hope you reach your hopes and goals, and we are all hoping for you, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We come to this side of the room. I think we have time for one or two more. Jack? Yep, right here.
So again, what great stories. We here in San Francisco think a lot about the next big thing, whatever that might be. It could be artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. Robots are somewhere in that big future. The two of you have had experiences close up with robots. I would be curious to have you each address the question of humanity in the context of robots. If you look out into the future, will they be positive? Will they be negative? What should we expect as the science develops even further in the field?
Nice small question, right?
Yeah. I think that robots are going to play a ever increasingly large role in our society, and as well as like machine learning, in order to make our machines smarter. And I think that humans like to keep busy. I think humans like to have a purpose. They like to know that they're contributing to something that has a goal, whatever that may be. They like to work with other people. Like the story of the prisoners, a form of torture is to have prisoners dig a hole and then fill it again continuously. Whereas if you had prisoners, actually build a wall that served a purpose, that actually gave them more fulfillment than the former task. So I think that as machines and our algorithms get smarter, humans will find a way to keep ourselves occupied and find a way to develop purpose and meaning in our lives. And I think we've seen that over the past centuries, where we've introduced more and more technology into the world, and always humans have found a way to benefit from that technology in terms of increasing our quality of life, increasing our life expectancy, increasing our entertainment comforts, and at the same time being more productive.
Well, I also believe that we needed to prepare the younger generation for future jobs, because there might be the jobs that today maybe it's not going to be within the next 10 years or 20 years. So we needed to prepare our younger generation. But on the other hand, I also believe that we needed to have governments and the companies and corporations and individuals be responsible and have ethical code, because we don't want to just create robots and using the AI and make people to not have a job. We have to make sure that the future jobs is created also jobs for the people in the future. So I believe that as well.
Last one. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, but you'll have a chance in conversation.
So thank you so much for having you all here. So my question is that, as you said before, that there is no too many girls in the IT or in technology field. As I experienced this one in my country, which is Afghanistan, and originally I studied there computer science, and I was one of those girls that I have been always saying that no, you cannot continue education in the engineering major, and I have the experience that out of like 70 people in a class, only 5 people or 5 of them was girls. Why you think that? Is it something like people are saying is a stereotype or something that ladies are not good in mathematics or in an engineering thing? So what do you think about that? Because I was just thinking that it's only in my country, which is a poor country, and they don't let the girls going out for education, or they don't have the opportunities to continue their education in mathematics or engineering. So I was just like, listen to you, and I just got that it's the same thing in other countries, like out of Afghanistan too. So what would be the reason? Thank you.
I think that even in Australia, like a lot of girls are actively discouraged from going into engineering. So even my mum said she was very surprised that I wanted to do engineering, because she said that it was a man's job and it's dirty and that there aren't many girls in the field. And so she was like, I'm not sure about engineering. And there's like girls' schools in Australia as well, where the teachers tell the parents, oh, and we don't encourage the girls into engineering because we like to produce doctors and lawyers out of our girls here, and so there's still so it's really unfortunate, like that the community has this perception of engineers, and so that's why with Robogals we try to change that perception. And so I tell girls about like really exciting projects they can work on that impact people's lives. So so many technologies that we're working on here in the Bay Area, that lots in med tech, for example, all these innovations that mean that people can extend their life, so we and also like I think it's just perception. A girl is more likely to go into engineering if they have like a father or an uncle or a family friend who is an engineer, because they have that role modeling, and they can hear about the tasks that are done at work. They can get a sense of what it's like to be an engineer. But if a girl doesn't have that role model in their life, then they don't really know what an engineer does. I guess it's different here in the Bay Area, where like so many people are engineers, and so every day parents are going to work and creating new technology, creating the future. But in a place like Australia, where that's like we're really removed from this world, it's chairs are just there, like tables are just there, cars are just there. You don't see your parents go and make cars every day or design cars every day. They just come from Germany or they come from Japan, and so girls don't really make that link between, oh, I can actually be the person to make a self-driving car, or to make Google, or to make Facebook. And so we go out there and we tell them, you can do this, like this was made by humans just like you. So I think it's that lack of visibility in the community. Girls know what a doctor is, they know what a nurse is, they know what a teacher is, a policeman, they see that in their community. But when an engineer walks around, there's no uniform, or like, and not that we want one, but there's no way to understand what they do, because you don't go to an engineer a girl wouldn't go to an engineer like they would a doctor if they got sick, for example.
I'm glad, Marita, that you mentioned the role of fathers in this, and it reminded me, I mentioned Malala in the opening remarks. When she came to the Asia Society in New York to receive her Game Changer honor, her father was with her. And some of you may have seen, if you've seen the two of them together, or she will, out of the gates, when asked a question like yours, she will always credit him with, this is a different issue, it wasn't science, but just that's where she found her remarkable resilience, was she felt she had somebody telling her from a young age, you're just as good as any of the boys and your brother and all the rest. I think the time for this session is winding down. I know Margaret has that special presentation or award of a different kind to present. But just before we do that, a huge round of applause for these amazing people.
Yes, thank you to all of our Game Changer West honorees for sharing your stories, for your amazing work. It is our honor to have all of you here in Northern California.